Okay, guys, so it's time for my presentation. What I will be showing today is the Sync framework. So let me share a screen. And I only have like 2 slices, so it's going to be like really, really fast presentation. So, okay, basically yesterday we released the version 23 for the Sync framework. This is can be used with Developer Express 20.2.5. Um, so what we introduce in this release is basically um, well, I would say like some methods that will allow you to work with collisions in your database synchronization. So basically, this is what we have. We have a synchronization conflict resolution. So if you have seen the demos before from the Sync framework, you have this method like push deltas. So that implemented it internal logic and it was closed. You cannot override them. But now we have implemented not only a method that is overwritable, but we have added some optional parameters. For example, the first parameter that we're going to talk about is mark deltas as processed. So this parameter, what it does is when you push deltas to the server, before you used to mark them as processed at the same time, but now it's optional, so you can do an additional logic. Maybe you want to send the deltas to 2 different servers. You can do that now. Before you need to do a lot of custom code for that. And the second parameter that we introduce is the check deltas before send. So if there's a communication case where you send the deltas to the server and the communication is broken, now before sending the next batch of deltas, the process will basically check the server before. So we will reduce the amount of collisions that we have. And then the third parameter that we introduce is the exception custom action. So when an exception happens during the synchronization, that can usually be 2 types of exception. It can be a constraint violation exception that happens when you have a duplicate primary key. So also you can have a concurrency exception. Those are the 2 exceptions that are most common during the synchronization. So now you can add a custom function or action to handle this with your own logic. So basically, this is what we introduce. We have the client, like this can be a remote location, for example, remote office, mobile phone, or something like that. So now when you send the deltas to the master to synchronize it, the master can return you an exception. So you can decide what to do in that exception because you will get all the information from that error. You will get the delta, you will get the reason why it was rejected, and you will get the client again. So you can basically decide what to do with the information that you have and send the delta again. So now it's more resilient. It's like we cannot decide which logic to do because the logic mostly depend on your use case and in your data structure. But as we give you an opportunity to, okay, there was a problem. This is all the information that you have, so you can fix it. So basically, that was my presentation. Now let's go to the technical example. That we only have the unit test, but we will include this in the demos that we have public, so you can give it a try to these scenarios. So the first scenario is check the deltas before you push. So usually what we have here is basically we are creating 2 different data layers, 2 connection strings to emulate 2 different locations, right? And then with those, we create 2 data stores and eventually 2 data layers. So we have 2 different data layers, like emulating 2 different offices or 2 different locations or 2 different devices. So we create records in both of them. And like, for example, here we're creating two customers, Javier and Joche, and then we have Rafael and Jaime. We committed in both. And then basically we do, what we do to emulate the error is we send the deltas twice, right? So here in the example, you can see that if you run this with false as the last parameter, like check deltas before sending, if you turn it off, basically it will try to resend a delta that you already sent to the server. that will basically create an exception. So if we run it as it is right now, that was the case from the last version because we didn't have these parameters. This will basically break. If we run this, it will throw an exception, and you will see that the exception is that it's a constrained exception. So something happened on the server that created a duplicated information. So, okay, it didn't, okay, it's broken, see, it like failed. And if we check the exception, it's telling you that there was a constraint violation. So basically you send a delta that inserts a record, and then you send it again and you create a constraint error. So basically to handle that, if you turn this last option to true, which is the default value now, before it sends the delta again, it will check if that delta was already processed by the server. That was the simplest solution that we can find because there was a lot of, we plan to introduce some actions on the server side to handling that. But basically, if the records are already there, and if you're using a GUI type of key, it means that you already sent that. So what is the most easiest approach to do is just to review before send, and then you decide what to do if was sent already. Maybe you can keep it for synchronize it with another server, or you just can delete that delta and move forward. So now, besides handling the data synchronization, we give you options to handle these cases that they will happen actually. If you give it enough time to a synchronization layout, give it 6 months, and then you will have an error. Why? Because something breaks, like communication breaks during the synchronization, so on and so forth. So now if we run this with the new version, with the optional parameters, that will check before it's sent, so it will not send repeated deltas to the server. So if we run this, basically the test will succeed. Because even though we're sending the deltas twice in the second call, we are checking before send. So that means that we're not sending duplicated data to the server. And as you can see, the test passed. So I think this is not like really, I mean, doesn't give you that much the idea. For me, it looks clear as water because I wrote these test scenarios. But we will include these test scenarios in our demo with Xamarin because most of people use it, the combination between SAF and Xamarin. And now let's see, we have another test case.
There's one question. Do the primary keys have to be GUIDs?
Yes, I mean, because the thing is that otherwise, how you will generate the key depends on your database engine in the sequence table, so on and so forth. And we're not synchronizing that because we think that that's part of the database engine itself. So it's better for you in general to use GUID type of keys to avoid any type of collision.
Is there a way to attach that GUID key externally, like with an external sync GUID field, so like a secondary key field out of the box right now?
No, actually at the moment is like regarding the deltas, we keep track of the numbers and on which delta are you at the moment, like doing the synchronization. But regarding your business object, it's up to you to decide which type of key and how you will generate the key. The best approach in general that we recommend is to use anything that will not go to the infrastructure of the database. So don't use sequential types in any of the database server. For example, identity in SQL server or autonumeric in Access, let's say.
Yeah, so, but for example, if I have an existing table or an existing table I want to sync, for example, person is like a table that is 100. You don't change the primary key of person that is like 15 years old. Because you can't update all the relationships and all that kind of stuff. Is there a way to have like a secondary key that is just an attached GUID field to a table or to a class?
The thing is no, because I would say that what we're doing is we're synchronizing the transaction. So we have a copy of the transaction and we replicate it on the other side.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense.
So basically it's like because we have done this like for almost like 10 years, I think, like we've been working on this product. And our first versions that we have, like really old versions and prototypes, they were based on your data. They check your data, and then but that approach
totally
is almost
makes sense.
impossible to I mean, to have a generic approach is really difficult in that way if you're doing with the data. So basically, we decided to no, let's keep track of whatever is happening on the database. We save it, and then we execute it on the other side. That's why changing
like
the
a
key
transaction log,
basically like a transaction log. Basically, we're using
it
almost
is a
the same.
transaction log,
It's a transaction log. Actually, we're using almost the same mechanism as the database will use internally to synchronize, but we do it externally. That's the different case. So
that's very clever. That's really clever.
Now, I mean, you cannot imagine how much approaches we have because of this tool, and it's been like through several versions and architectures, and I think that we finally nail it, especially with XPO, right? Because that I will say is our expertise in the Office XPO. So then we have the second case. Basically, is that the most common error that you will have in synchronization are concurrency problems, where, for example, one of your clients, the client in Office A, modify what the Office B did. So in general, that is not a synchronization error. That will be a database error, but it's handled by XPO. In XPO, you can handle that. By default, it's using optimistic locking. So the optimistic locking works like this. I will read the record. I will check the number of the optimistic locking. And when I update it, I expect it to be the same. If it's not, it means that someone else changed the record. So now what you can do in general, I mean, that was always possible with the oldest version, but we didn't have a test case that showed that. So if you want to override changes like in the last in win approach, basically you can just turn off the locking mechanism from XPO. So in this case, I'm turning off the locking mechanism. So it's none. It means that it will not check before it executes the update. So basically, if we see the test case here, it's exactly the same. I create two data layers. I create records with both data layers. Then in the last part, to not make this so long, I mean, that's why I collapsed this. Basically, both modify the same record in both sides. So with optimistic locking on, that will throw a concurrency error in general. But if you turn it off, it will basically swallow it. Because let's go and check the queries. So at the moment we have, I will turn it on because that's the default on XPO. So even if you don't do anything, optimistic concurrency will be turned on if you use any of the bases that allows that. So let's run this and let's check the query, how the query is generated. So I have to put the breakpoint before. So just one sec. Let me go back to
Estoy en reunión, no juegues. No juegues.
here.
Okay. So photonics.
So let's run this again. Okay, in here we're getting the error, right? That is that the object was modified by other, or was purged in general. So hold on, let me go to here. So let's turn this off to none. And let's run this again. Okay, so now it's moving, and let's see. You will see the queries. So if we check the query here, you will see that it doesn't contain the, I will take this. it doesn't check the optimistic concurrency in general. So you can synchronize even if you will overwrite someone else's data. But again, that's up to you in your business scenario. So regarding synchronization, we do most of the stuff that is saving the database differences between all the possible instances, and then we can process them. But what is in those differences and how you will handle it is basically up to you. So during the synchronization, there are basically two components. The part that we can provide to you, like automatically, that is saving and processing differences or deltas, and the part that you have to make your own logic, which is how I will handle collisions, like concurrency collisions, or how I will do primary key collision also. Like I already inserted this, what I should do, like I discard that delta or I save it for later. What should I do with that? So,
or for example, if you have logical collisions, if you have like a category and you don't have a category, it's just a table with ID and name, for example.
yeah.
But you don't have you have a sync problem here because somebody wrote, for example, Xenial as a name, and then DevExpress as a name, and then DevExpress again as a name, and then you have duplicate records. And if you don't have a constraint on the table, then you have like 3 categories with the same text that is logically the same, but has 4 different primary keys.
Yeah, actually, is basically we're trying to handle all the default scenarios on how XPO and SAF work. So in general, in XPO, by default, you have turned on optimistic concurrency because most of the time you will use XP object, right? In SAF, you get that also from the base object. So in general,
that's a thing with validation and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes you can only check validation rules at the client, and then they change at the server, and then
I mean, in here there are infinite scenarios. Like we learned that there is no something that you can turn on the key and it will work. Basically, what we tell to the customer is that you need to know your data and you need to know your scenarios also, because you can do as much and whatever you want. Like because XPO is really versatile, I would say that you can do a lot of stuff, but you need to understand what is happening in your data in general. Because let me try to show you the queries if I have optimistic locking on. So let's debug this and let's put it here. You will see that the queries will include the optimistic check.
Yeah.
So let's see. Here we have the queries. No, but this is the insert, so it's not yet. I put it too early. So it should be
after A.
This one here. Yeah. Okay, so let's run this again and let's see.
There was a question, can you use SQL as sync data? I mean, SQL insert, update, deletes.
Well, in general, you can, we have not done yet that at the moment, but in the future, we want to introduce a way to edit the delta. But again, you have to know what you're doing because only you know how your data interact, basically. So usually want to give the users the tools and the right moments to basically handle their data synchronization. But mostly it will be up to the customer to decide what to do. I mean, what do you do with a collision check on primary keys? How can I decide what is best for your scenario? So that's why we introduce these moments, and basically we have tracked the type of errors that we get, and mostly they are constraint violations or primary key duplication, which is a constraint violation anyway. So if you know how to handle those in your normal day-to-day, then you can do it with the Syn framework, and it will be a piece of cake for you. Because those problems can also happen when you have just one database. You might not see it that often, but they can happen anyway. So let's come here and let's check the queries and let's see what we have. and these are still inserts. So it was after this one, actually. So let's try it one more time. You know, I practiced this like before. Oh, we have that already, which is this. Yeah, in this case, I think I created a scenario where we cannot check it. But the thing is that we saw that if we turn on optimistic locking and we overwrite, XPO will protect itself in general. So, and if you turn it off, the synchronization will just work. So that's why we introduced these optional parameters. And I don't have an example for the third case, which is like when you add an action and you decide whatever you do there. It's like you can send it to the server, delete it if you don't need it. You need to do enough checks to decide what to do in general. So basically, those are the new functionalities in the new version of the Sync framework. For what is rest of the year, we plan to introduce a way to edit the deltas, and basically that's it. And we will create more extensions. Oh, sorry, I forgot other extensions that we introduced. Now also, but oh, I don't have an example for it. But we introduce a new project. You can see it here, which are the SAF extension, which basically allows you to do a synchronization with SAF with just one line of code. Basically, you have to do 2 lines of code. The first line is to register our provider, that we always do. For example, any XPO provider, you need to do a registration, so XPO understand that you're using it. And beside that, you can use in one line from the object space, pull and push deltas. So basically, you have to add just one word to your normal flow, and you're able to do synchronization. So since this was released yesterday, basically we don't have as much examples so far. But during this week, I will say I will be posting videos about the new cases of synchronization, because it's mostly about the cases more than the tool in general. So if you can understand the cases, then synchronization is a piece of cake.
We should do a follow up on that, but because I'm really happy about this and really interested about how it works and how we can improve it to make it more resilient on
Yeah,
some use cases.
yeah,
Let's
there are
do
there are
let's do
some
a
cases
Twitch
that,
about it.
yeah, there are some cases that you can handle automatically, because, for example, if you have a primary key collision, it means that you already sent that delta. So it's easy to handle. You just
or
delete
not
the delta.
Yeah,
No, because
but we can follow up on that on the Twitch stream, because
because
we can
that can
hours
be
about
like
it.
immensely huge. I mean, all the possibilities there. So in general, we in the big change between this version and the last version, the previous version, is that before you need to give us a call, we will review the deltas, we will do it manually. Now you have the tools yourself to create your own synchronization scenario. That's why we need to update the examples, because we want to create, okay, this is, we will introduce some type of policies that the normal cases is like, okay, if it's a duplicated primary key and the primary key is GUID, it means that you already send it, because otherwise, how can you generate the same key again? So there are several cases. So I guess we will follow up on Twitch, but for the people that is using our current version, you can move to the newest preview if you have our NuGet feed in general. So that's it for me, guys.
There was one last question, but I think I can answer that, because we might answer that on the Twitch stream. Is like, it was like, I mean, SQL insert update deletes. When you commit data, it generates SQL and use this SQL instead. And I think you can, I can answer that pretty much, because it's on the XPO layer. You can tweak the SQL on any level, but it's basically around all the transaction active record pattern. So it's it is possible, but it's not the main goal of the project, I guess.
Yeah, and well, I want to just to follow up on your answer,
because there is this merge SQL syntax and all that kind of stuff. You definitely can intercept it, but it's probably not that easy.
Yeah, and actually at the moment, I mean, we have the moments where you can edit the deltas, right? Like during the synchronization to introduce your own logic. So,
but this question was, can you go down the very, very, very deep SQL level? Yes, you can, but you have to you have
need
to
to go
follow
through the layers, and
through the
also
layers. Yes.
and also it's like for example, one of the biggest thing about this framework is that allows you to synchronize two different type of databases. You can synchronize an Oracle database with an SQL server or an SQLite.
It's like a higher protocol. It's like it's more a general purpose data synchronization where you can really synchronize between SQLite and a MySQL database, and on the other hand, the MS SQL database, and the other file is a text file or an XML
I mean,
file.
whatever you have, like, is being executed through
everything
XPO.
that has everything that has an XPO driver.
Yes, and basically the idea is that you can go to really deep SQL level if you're using the same database engine in every client.
Yes.
Because if you're doing a synchronization, like in Xamarin, like from mobile, that is usually SQLite, to anything else on the server side, what you write for SQLite might not work for Oracle on the other side. So you need to be aware, like that if you're using two different database engines for the synchronization, you need to be aware of handling all of the possibilities in general. But if you're using just SQL Server in all of your location, then it's really, really easy. You can edit it in one side and you know for sure that it will work
because it normally follows the same semantics. It's the same thing. It's the same thing if you try to do a database agnostic solution where you support SQLite, MS SQL, and for example Postgre, and for example Oracle.
You know what the name of that tool? XPO.
The thing is, but nonetheless, XPO is the right thing to do all the data insert and selection, commit and transaction stuff. But you have database table limitations that are different handled.
Exactly.
For example, SQLite doesn't care if you insert. If you say table size or table column size is 200 characters, and you throw 4,000 characters, it's okay, you throw 4,000 characters at me, I save exactly 200.
Yeah. So
and I'm fine. And SQL Server will scream at you, and MySQL will scream at you because you thrown one character that is in the wrong collation.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. You can't do.
Okay, guys. Okay. Let's follow up in a Twitch stream. I do have to go and pick up my daughter at daycare, so I cannot. But I want to say a few things again. One thing that I want to add is we are working a prototype of a proof of concept or something that we call internally an XPO management tool. That means because the same framework doesn't handle if you do direct change on the database. So if you do that, he won't pick up. He doesn't know that something changed on the database if it didn't go through the XPO layer. So we are doing some type of management tool that if you want your admin to do a change on the database directly, you use that tool and that will go through the XPO and that will work on the same framework. And the same framework, the only thing that you always have to think that there is a lot of thought and a lot of design of how to make it as simple as possible for the end developer, but there is also the execution plan in your business, in your logic, that you need to be aware of how everything is happening. So with that one, we can follow up offline. We say offline, but it's online. You guys can write an email. We can do a Twitch. We can do a YouTube video. We can, again, talk to this a lot more. We love always to talk about SAF, XPO, Blazor, DevExpress Control, .NET in general. So thank you everyone for showing up.
And only 4 minutes over time.
The picture. Everyone turns on the camera for the picture. We always take the picture of the meetup. So if we have the last minute, sorry that I cut you off, Javier.
No,
we need
that's
the picture
perfect.
for this one.
I almost forget the picture. I know that you have been asking all the time, so I like that.
So everyone knows each other. Like, okay, guys. So whoever is left, you're missing your opportunity. So 1, 2, 3, smile.
Hey.
So, you will see this in the group. I will post it there.
Hey.
Okay, hold on. We need one more with Gustavo. Gustavo, smile. 1, 2, 3, and here you go again. Okay, so that's it, guys. Thanks for coming, and It was a great meetup as always.
Yeah, thank you everyone for showing up. I always amazed that you guys spend your Thursday here with us talking about technology, but I really enjoy it. I appreciate you guys here. So see you next time.
Hey, 1,000
1,000
members. Yeah.
Bye.
Okay, guys. Bye.